Kia ora everyone. We'll get started. Transport Committee today, welcome along. Me karakia tātou. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mākina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hia ki ana te atakura, he tio, he hoka, he hauhu, ti hei, mauri ora. Just going to give an apology for Councillor Ponta for lateness. He is in the building, we understand. So if someone wants to, and then we've got others online, welcome online, and otherwise everyone's here. And here is Darren, so let's actually just not even move that, because we'll just act as if we've just started now. So that's great, so apologies, no apologies. Well done, everybody. Item 2, conflict of interest declarations. Are there any conflicts to declare? I see none, thank you. Item 3, public participation. So we've got a couple of items here. Wesley is first. So Wesley, coming up to the desk. No, I think Wesley's got to go first because he's got to go. So that's what I've been informed about. And so Wesley, it's 5 minutes, and then 5 minutes for questions. So over to you.
Hello, welcome to allow me to be here. I have noticed that the nationwide public transit ticketing system keeps getting delayed. I just saw an article about it this morning. My concern with that is the fact that obviously with our Snapper contract due to expire soon, it's going to cause a lot of chaos for the disabled community and those that use Community Connect, because we'll be like, what do we go to if Snapper can't renew its contract and the new system's not ready to go?
Would you do? Are you looking? Is that the end of your presentation?
I was waiting for you guys to ask me questions.
Okay. Are there any questions from councillors in relation to this? We might be able to give you a little update on where things are. I can tell you what I know. That we do have. Obviously, we've got the contract with Snapper until the end of 2026. And I don't think there's much we can really say officially. We are committed to this program that the government is running with the Transport Agency, and we're watching it very carefully. Obviously, Sam here is on the kind of governance group for that project. But yeah, I think you raised valid concerns, and I think I can say that we're I think we would be very concerned if we got any closer to the end date for Snapper and things look like they were.
Well, as the one that's been involved in Community Connect, getting that off the ground and making sure it launched smoothly, I want to make sure that transition happens smoothly as well.
Yeah. Well, I think we're all very concerned about the smooth transition and also the delays. I mean, obviously, there have been a lot of delays, as you mentioned, for the project overall, and there are,
and obviously
delays now in Canterbury again that have just been announced. So, yeah.
The reason why I'm commenting on this is because there's been heaps of media articles in the last few days, including one this morning that obviously mentioned the Snapper contract.
Yeah, maybe Sam wants to talk about that.
Kia ora, Wesley. Just in terms of our transition from Snapper to an NTS, the NTS product, we won't be in a position. We will make sure that we transition in a way that we have adequate time to let all of our customers know about what the change is and when that's happening, and to make sure that everyone is equipped to be able to deal with the new system. And we won't be in a position where we don't have a ticketing system. So we're working with the NTS program at the moment just to make sure that we've got contingencies in place should there be further delays. So don't worry about that too much. I think we've got that under control. We definitely will be making sure that we have ticketing available on an ongoing basis, and for any changes, we'll be making sure that we let customers know adequately in advance about what the changes are and how you need to deal with things differently under a new system.
Well, because the reason why I was asking this is because as a person with a disability and a part of the disabled community, it can take the disabled community quite some time to transition because their support workers will have to be trained up on how to use the new system. Then they will have to teach the person that they're supporting how it all works. So it takes a lot of time, and it's a slow process for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, it's good points and good for us to think about. And yeah, I guess I can just reiterate what Sam said. There'll be a transition period, but I think it's worth recognizing that this is a concern for us. We're watching it very carefully, and would be happy to hear from you again if you want to talk more about the transition as it pertains specifically to people with disabilities.
Yeah, I will be coming to up and coming meetings, so as things happen, I will let you guys know.
Thanks, Councillor Gaylor.
Thank you. Thanks, Wesley, for coming in. I just wonder if you're aware or not aware, but online is Andrew, who's actually the chair of the Public Transport Advisory Group meeting. So he's also listening in to your feedback. So I thought that might just be a good one to point out to you.
Happy with that? Other questions from councillors? No, that's good. Thank you, Wesley, for coming in. Thanks. It's a good reminder that these big projects, transition projects, have a specific impact on people with disabilities. So thank you.
Yep, well, having successfully launched Community Connect, I don't want things to go wrong.
No, neither do we. Thank you. Thanks, Wesley. Good points, well made and noted. So next is Andy Fraser. So welcome, Andy. Is online. I can see there. And yeah, same deal. 5 minutes and then 5 minutes for us. So go ahead, Andy.
Tuatai, nei rā te mihi kia koe kai whakahaere me te kai karakere I tēnei ata. Hoi anō, ka huri rani te whare o te karauni hera, nei rā te mihi kia koutou. Ko wai au, ko Andy Fraser a hau te tumuaki o te karati o Otaki, me te kai whakahaere o te kāhui tokotoko o Otaki. Tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Kia ora koutou, my name's Andy Fraser. I'm here this morning on behalf of myself as tumuaki of the Otaki College, as well as my other role as the Kāhui Ako lead for our collective kura in Otaki. The reason I'm attending this morning is to raise our ongoing concerns over a 290 bus service that was put into action a little while back to cater for students leaving Otaki to attend primary and secondary schools in Paraparaumu. Historically, this came about, I believe, through, and I'm going to say politely, a very misguided submission by a member of the Otaki Community Board who decided, without consultation of most of her colleagues, that she would advocate for this service to be put into place to take students down to the southern colleges, and it was based on her assumptions around her own daughters who actually attended Kapiti College and who became very tired at the end of the day travelling on a public bus service which she considered overcrowded. I felt that that was a very self-serving and misguided application. We took this to the Mayor, and the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor, the CEO, and myself met with the Chair of our Community Board, and in his words, he believed he dropped the ball on that submission. Also, there was communications with my colleagues to the south of me at Kapiti and Paraparaumu College who submitted letters to state that they did not want that service put into place. Despite all of this, it seems to have fallen on deaf ears. We still have this bus service in place. It was our understanding that the bus service was just going to be an extra public bus service that would cater for larger numbers with those young people travelling on it. However, it's morphed into bus stop signs that state that the bus is for Paraparaumu College or Kapiti College. It has that running on the front and rear of the buses, and more recently we've cited a bus going down the old state highway route with school bus signs on it. And of course, I guess for us, this is hugely worrying. There was no consultation undertaken with us here as Otaki schools, primary and secondary, and we're now seeing issues around those young people leaving our community. My understanding is it's normal process to have an impact survey when such things happen, but that never happened for us. We believe that, I guess that those buses running down have again highlighted the fact that we've worked so hard to push back against the bigger, the better, and the white flight from this community. And this has just opened that door again. We also have our principals south of here at our two colleges and in the primary schools there who are not actually in support of this sort of process. We've all committed collaboratively and collectively that we want to work in our enrolment zones. And in actual fact, this prolificates the issue around enrolment zones where ballots are put in place and the first priority is siblings going to a school in a particular area out of zone. So what does it do for us? It continues to cause disconnect with families that have come into our community. The fastest way we understand that families get to know our community is through their young people, through their schools, connecting through those activities. That's not happening. It is causing more people to look and wonder why that particular phenomenon is happening. All our schools in this area are high-performing schools with fantastic aero reviews, and yet this sort of thing destabilises it, and falling rolls bring a process called a CAPNA, and that CAPNA means that often teachers that were in those schools where rolls drop lose their jobs, and for some people, they're going to be people that have served our community, are completely committed to our community, losing their jobs over that. And with teachers losing jobs and numbers dropping, it also means in the secondary school context that our ability to provide a wide range of subject curriculum areas to our young people diminishes. And again, it causes further destabilisation. So I'm rattling through at 90 miles an hour trying to make the most of this time, but I want to stress really at the end of all of this, in terms of outcomes, clearly you probably can't stop that service, but I really would like to know why there was no consultation with us here, why there was no, the letters from my southern counterparts weren't listened to, and why we are having school bus signs on Greater Wellington Regional Council buses trucking kids out of our community. And I guess at best, could we go back to providing a public bus service that is not emblazoned with advertising to take people out of our community? We're all, really concerned over this whole process and what it does for a town like us, that for many, many years, our mantra has been in Otaki, by Otaki, for Otaki. And when we're having submissions made by a community board that are clearly disconnected, I mean, they're touting for bus services to get to health services, which we actually have in our own town. Really concerned about this process. So, nō reira, mihi atu kia koutou. Thank you for listening. That's me.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Andy, for that very clear presentation and for some good, clear questions as well for us. And just, I'm going to ask Sam at some point, I'll check if there's questions first, but I will ask Sam to talk to this, because I can say there has been quite a bit of work on it, and Councillor Gaylor has been doing diligent and effective work here on it, but we haven't been able to solve the problem as you've said. So hopefully, I mean, you shouldn't have had to come and talk to us in this way, but hopefully, as a result of it, we will be able to get a clear and comprehensive solution to the problem to the extent possible. But I will ask just if there's any questions, Councillor Staples.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question's probably directed at our officers, please. Can I just seek some clarification around the school bus service, whether it is actually one of ours or a school bus service that, please?
Through you, Chair, yes, it is a school bus service, and it does meet the requirements of a school bus service as an RPTP.
Are there other questions? Yeah, carry on, Councillor Staples, and then Councillor Gaylor.
Sorry, a lot of the school bus services are not ours. They're separate contracts, so this is ours.
Yes, this is the Metlink service, and it is operated as a Metlink school bus service, yes.
Councillor Gaylor.
Yeah, thank you. So I think this is often, like, I remain very confused about the difference between our school bus service and a Ministry of Education school bus service. So first question, can you please explain what makes our school bus services different? And then also, can you please, to answer Councillor Staples' question in my mind, is what was the process? What was the consultation process for us to start up a new service that is this designated school bus service? Because I live in Otaki and have school children and was not aware of any consultation process.
Sam.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I think just to briefly give an overview of how the service has come about, there was basically overloading on the public service that was the bus from Otaki to Waikanai, and then people transferring from at Waikanai, school students to the college bus service from Waikanai. So it came about due to looking at that, the overloading, and a way to solve that issue. The submission that was mentioned did come in at the time we were looking at that, but was not the only aspect. It was really the capacity of the service. So we had been chartering an additional bus to provide additional capacity on the Otaki to Waikanai aspect of the route, and then there was also, additional capacity needed on the Waikanai to the schools, and so the decision was taken to address that capacity issue largely, to have the direct service. There was little consultation around that service because the communities being served were already being served by a bus service, and it met the requirements of our regional public transport policy for school buses, which is that supplementary school bus services can be provided where the capacity on the public transport network can't meet school demand, and it's more cost effective to provide a targeted school bus service than a regular public service. So that's the reason that we've put in place this Route 509 service and as a school bus service. In terms of it being more cost effective to run a school bus services run only during term time and are timetabled accordingly. So therefore, we save the cost of having the service running during school holiday periods. So that's part of the reason that it's more cost effective. So that's the reason that that's in place. In terms of so we provide school bus services where there's otherwise overloading on the public network, which is quite different from Ministry of Education, where they provide bus services where there's otherwise no way of getting to school. In terms of our process from here, we can and would be prepared to have another look at it, and have new Tamsin Evans, our new senior manager, network and customer, who could pick this up and have another look at it in terms of all of the circumstances that have been mentioned.
Thanks, Sam. So there's a couple of points. I guess one is dealing with the school bus sign. I mean, that's your specific request, Andy, and the other is a kind of wider look at our policy internally for consultation with schools when we're making changes or adjustments to school bus services that we run. That latter point, I think we can definitely look at, because it sounds like something fell through the cracks here. On the point about solving the immediate problem, I think, yeah, perhaps we need to have a meeting with, you know, Tamsin and you and whoever else, and Councillor Gaylor and some of the schools in the area that are affected, probably as soon as possible. Councillor Gaylor, does that sound like that would meet your needs? And then we'll come back to you, Andy.
But would meet my needs, but I think we need to make sure Andy's speaking on behalf of himself and the principals of, I don't know how many schools there are in Otaki, there's a lot. And particularly those principals of the schools down south on the coast. You know, I would want some assurance that this would be actioned immediately and quickly, because I have been raising this since last year and it's June. So I don't want to have another kind of process that's going to drag on. This has dragged on a long time.
No, I agree with you about that. And Andy, can I just, are there any other questions from folks around the table at this point? Councillor Staples?
Once again, Mr. Chair, probably a question for our officers. Are there any other parts of our district, that our region, that have similar situations? I'm just thinking of Wairarapa, where we have school buses taking children from Featherston to go to school in Masterton, etc., etc. And if we tried to stop that, we would be accused of stopping people having choice. Yeah. So I totally have sympathy with our presenter's point of view, but I'm wondering if there's anywhere else in our region that has this situation, because I also don't want to prevent parents from having choice of where they send their children to school.
Yeah, through you, Chair, I think this is the sort of situation that we really need to look at on a case-by-case basis. There are some other services that do run, a further distance than to the nearest school for the reasons in our policy. But I think it's a situation that we'd look at each on a case-by-case basis. So we wouldn't take a blanket approach.
Councillor Gallo, and then I'll come back to you, Andy.
Yeah, I just feel, thank you, Councillor Stables, that clarification, like these, there are a lot of school choices in Otaki, and some of the schools that these students are busing to are not the next closest, and they're not private schools, they're public schools.
Andy, you've been listening into our little discussion there, but so I just wondered if you had any thoughts for us in closing, and over to you.
Yeah, look, I do, and out of all respect to your officers, making a decision such as this based solely on numbers seems to me to be a very flawed way of understanding communities and community needs, and the other dynamics that occur around these sorts of decisions, which I've outlined previously. That's the first thing. The second thing I would say, and building on what Councillor Gaylor has mentioned to you, is when people move to our town, they actually understand that all those schools have enrolment zones, and parents do have decisions. They have a decision to stay in the zone of the school that they want their children to go to, or they move out of that zone. And I don't think it should be over to Greater Wellington Regional Council to be supplying buses to kids of parents who decide that they still want to take their kids out of zone for their schooling. If they wanted choice, and they have choice, their choice is that they can use public transport provided and or private transport. I think the big picture here is that the wider dynamics around what's happening to schools in New Zealand, and particularly schools in smaller communities, is that they need to be backed, they need to be supported, and we need to be understanding that that's a really powerful way of looking after smaller communities, keeping our people here, keeping them well looked after in schools that are actually providing high quality education. And Otaki I'm just going to close with, Otaki has the widest range of education, wider than what you will receive in Wellington. Montessori kindergarten, play centre, 5 kohanga reo bursting at the seams, a state primary school that is bilingual and total immersion, a secondary school that is now got its own immersion unit here, a kura iwi, a kura kaupapa Māori, and a Māori university, and 2 country schools on either side. You couldn't hope to have better choice, and we don't need buses to take people away.
Thank you, Andy.
I do have
Yes,
one follow-up
Councillor
question
Gaynor.
for Andy. Andy, in the last
Yes.
years, how many teachers have you lost as determined by the Ministry of Education because of dropping student numbers?
We've lost, in probably the last 5 years, we've lost 4 staff over those 5 years through the process of CAPNA. And it's meant that basically I've potentially had to shut down one curriculum area that was on offer here, and also put up higher numbers in my junior year 7 and 8 classes and what have you. So yeah, and that's because of the demographics of this town, and certainly not helped by this policy.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks for coming in to talk to us, and as discussed, we will get some communication out to you very shortly, hopefully by the end of this week, so we can set something up. So
Kia ora, ngā mihi.
thank you, kia ora. Okay, that's the end of public participation, as far as I know, unless there's anything else. So thank you. So item number 4 is confirmation of our public minutes from our public transport plan hearing on the 6th and 7th of May. Someone to move those. Who was there? Councillor Bassett and Councillor Connolly seconding. Those in favour say aye. Those against, that's passed. And then our public minutes of the meeting that we had on the Thursday after that. Someone to move those. Councillor Staples. Someone to second those. Councillor Laban. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, that's passed as well. So item 6, update on action items. So Sam, over to you.
Thank you. Kia ora, councillors. So usual update on action items is attached to this report. I just wanted to draw your attention to a couple of things. I know you would be interested in progress with the electric articulated buses procurement. Kinetic is looking at options. They're actually going to China to have a look at some of the people who responded to their initial tender, because they had such a large number of companies interested. So that is a little delayed from placing an order from where we'd expected, but that process is still going on. And there are a number of items which we have got upcoming workshop items. Emerging trends in transport is on the agenda for this meeting, as is the rail network update. And I just wanted to say there was the item that we were just talking about actually in terms of the Otaki bus, which this report says that you will have received some information. Thought that had gone to you this morning, but it hasn't, so apologies for that. We'll send that to you after the meeting, and it will be just further context, basically some of the things I went through as regards the RPTP policy and that kind of thing are in that memo that will be sent to you today. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sam. Are there any questions, Councillor Connolly and then Councillor Saul?
I just wanted to make a comment on the May Morn BRT stop stuff, which we did receive some information on, which was really good. And I have to confess, it was a week or 2 ago that I got the information, so it's not fresh in the top of my head. But I guess my question around that was, what are we doing to actively communicate that information to the community? In particular, that memo said that if someone from Maymorn catches a train in to work in the morning from the Maymorn station, and then their service is unplanned, replaced by a bus on the way home. The bus won't stop at Maymorn. It will go to Upper Hutt station, where we will arrange for them to get a taxi or a shuttle back to Maymorn. Now, that kind of information really needs to be communicated in advance, because at the moment, if those customers get to the train station and see that their train's been replaced by a bus, they just assume that there isn't a way for them to get back home, and they call their family and friends to pick them up and bring them home, and then write scathing reviews on Facebook about how crappy our service is, when we've actually got a solution in place, but it's not readily known what that solution is. So I think, whilst those are good decisions and pragmatic decisions, I'm not saying that they're the ideal decisions. I think that this is still a not great solution to this problem. But we need to really communicate it, such as some notices up at the station, letting people know this is what's going on, and when it is a planned bus replacement, it will not be leaving from this location, or the other location. It will go from Upper Hutt station.
Thoughts on that, Sam, or someone?
I think we'll pick that up and report back.
We can add it to the bus replacement improvement plan, which we actually can talk about later. Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Connolly. Councillor Saul?
Maybe I'm picking up on that point. So my question was about the Route 150 optimization, which is on page 30 and 31 of the papers. Just curious to know a little bit about what the NZTA's unwillingness to fund the improvements as my first question. And the second one is, I guess the action was to optimize the service. So is that something we may routinely see with NZTA, where we may be trying to optimize our services, but there won't be a willingness to fund them? Perhaps there's a broader service design question there. So I just want to understand that, if that was just a one-off, or is this something we could come to expect as we're trying to optimize various services?
Kia ora tātou. I don't know is the answer to that, but certainly coming in new to the role and looking at our service design processes, we will be going back through those processes and really understanding and clarifying, for example, the issues we just spoke about around school bus services, and better connection with rail services, and critically, yes, understanding that link with the NZTA funding. So I'm sorry I can't give you an answer, but it's an active space I'll be working in.
Could that be something we add to this to come out, like as a workshop item or back to Transport Committee when Tamsin's well and got your feet under the desk?
Yep. Well, I mean, it's on the list here. Is it sufficiently articulated as a?
Well, I don't think it was for that particular route, but I was just wondering if there's a bigger issue here around our service design, and if we're optimizing that, we might keep getting stuck in this loop.
Okay. Yep. That's noted.
Thank you.
Councillor Duthie.
Morena koutou. Just getting my technologically working. So I had two questions on the action list. One relates to the point that Councillor Saw was just highlighting, and if I'm on the right page, and that came from as a riverlink mitigation for Melling Station passengers who start their morning journeys from Kelson and get the 150 bus or use the park and ride at Melling Station. So I think the NZTA funding there is to do with as a riverlink mitigation. NZTA is not willing to fund any of those improvements. So my question there is, those improvements were reiterated in RPTP submissions. They've come up regularly. Are they things that can be looked at in the connection protection and in the Hutt Valley bus review next year, even if they can't be funded at this point in time as a riverlink mitigation?
Yes.
Yes, I thought that would be the answer. Yes, good question. Nice, snappy answer.
Good.
Oh,
Second question.
yes, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. So one was back a few pages. I think it was page 27. It's the item about reliability and punctuality data for planned buses replacing trains. And it says Metlink is not currently able to measure punctuality and reliability of planned bus replacements. Isn't reliability a measure of whether the service actually ran? So is that correct that Metlink doesn't know whether a planned bus replacement actually ran or not? That doesn't make sense to me.
Through you, Chair, we know whether the service ran or not, but we're looking at this whole area. It's not only whether it ran, it's also whether it ran in a timely manner, and because they're not timetabled, we can't measure that. So it's a different range of things that we would be measuring for BRT. So, I mean, we're looking at the best way that we can measure the performance of BRT and report on it.
But we can measure reliability, just not punctuality. Is that right? Reliability being a measure of whether it ran or not.
I'm pretty sure you need the start time. So we need to be able to measure that part. And currently we can't do that.
So, supplementary question. When we get reports on rail reliability, my understanding was if it was 99% reliable, that included bus replaced rail trips that they had run or not run in that data. If we're not able to measure the reliability of a planned bus replacement, does that mean our data on rail reliability does not include bus replacements? It only includes actual trains?
Through you, Chair, you're correct that the rail reliability reporting includes where a bus has replaced a train, and it is considered for that metric as though a train ran. So there was a service provided. So we know, as you said, that whether a service was provided. I think what we are looking at in the context of this action is having some, I guess, more detailed information about the BRT service in terms of, did it run to the time that was expected?
Do we know whether it ran or not?
I'm assuming we do know whether it ran or not.
So then we should have the reliability data, because reliability is just in our metrics. It's just whether it ran or not. So this is quite a straightforward question. If we don't know the answer, that's fine. But I think it's a good question from Councillor Duthie, and we should if we don't know the answer now, that's fine. But we should get a clear answer, because it does mean that if we don't know whether a bus service did actually replacing a rail service, then we don't have accurate reliability data for rail.
No, we don't.
Okay. So we're working on a solution to that at the moment, as discussed in the reports
BRT.
on bus replacement. Okay. Thank you. Was that everything, Councillor Duthie? Okay, thank you. Are there any other points, questions on the action items? See none. So thank you. We'll move on to item 7, which is a very interesting paper as usual. Emerging trends on transport. Lots of rich data and analysis in here. Thank you, Andy, for that, and I see Tim as well. So we're in your hands. Take us through.
Thank you, through the chair. Kia ora koutou, councillors. Obviously, this is our sort of biannual update on emerging trends in transport. It's quite a few slides, so we'll rattle through pretty quickly today, just highlighting a few of the key points. There's a few sections. Most of this will be run through Andy as part of the Wellington Analytics Unit, Transport Analytics Unit. But just to kick off, we'll go through some relative head-to-heads of private car versus public transport. So thanks to Reza, who's sitting in the back there, for doing some analysis and updating some figures around the relative cost of public transport versus the private car. And thanks to Andy to obviously looking at the relative speed of some of our public transport routes relative to car. And combine these two obviously will help dictate people's travel patterns and choices. So very quickly, just a few key highlights from the relative cost. Thanks, Andy, if you just skip through to the first slide. So the relative cost of PT fares, what this work is showing us, we'll just go through the first one there. The relative cost is around about 3 trips on public transport. Typically, once you take, or you have 3 people in a car, it's essentially more affordable to drive than take public transport. Clearly, there's a very strong value proposition. If you're a solo traveller, PT will offer up considerable savings. And essentially, that's what that first graph is showing. It's also interesting to note that with distance, public transport becomes slightly less affordable, and I think that's based on the relatively high fixed costs associated with a car. You've got parking associated, you've got obviously you've got your registration and your maintenance. But what we also are saying in that slide, it's quite important to note that the level of subsidisation of public transport increases quite a lot with distance. So the level of subsidies we'll offer to somebody to travel on public transport to Marston tends to be higher than those offered to somebody per kilometre in the Wellington region. So it kind of indicated to us, this work was quite useful for us as well, that our fare setting seems to be in the right range to balance those two forces, which is essentially trying to be as affordable or as competitive as possible to a private car, but at the same time taking into account the level of subsidisation that occurs the further out you go. Probably the key point there, and this is a really good piece of work that Reza identified, is if you leave the car at home, so essentially you don't take into account the fixed costs of owning a car, for the average traveller, which is typically around 4 zones, you'll save around about $5,000 a year. And if you don't have a car or you decide not to buy a car, and that's once again taking into account those fixed costs associated with owning a car, the average person would save around about $8,000 a year by using public transport. So very clear value proposition. So long as there's 2 or less people in a private car, public transport is
just a point on that.
Oh, yeah, Chris,
thank you.
Have a question on this specific item?
Just a point on that last one. When we talked about this, we talked about bringing in the full costs of vehicles, and I know we've done that, but we should also be bringing in the emissions differentials there, because that will affect the longer journeys quite significantly. And so I'd appreciate if we can have a look at that at some time. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, good point. We can definitely provide that information, and there is a cost associated with those emissions as well, so we can actually quantify those. And the last slide from me before we pass over to Andy. This was an interesting piece of work as well. So it's the relative travel time, how competitive the travel times are. You'll see the rail network tends to be obviously much more competitive when it comes to travel times than the various destinations that are on the bus network, and you can see that with sort of Parramatta and a few Upper Hutt. They are indeed actually quicker than a private car for those journeys. Once again, when there's congestion on the roads, public transport, the rail network tends to be much more competitive, which is what you would expect. And then again, during the interpeak, the private car, presumably because it doesn't stop along the way, is more competitive than a bus. Once again, the key takeaway here is we believe that bus prioritisation, which are some of the key projects we're working on, will level that playing field quite quickly. And once again, that will be a key driver for mode shift. So obviously a key strategy that's already in play.
That's just the travel time. But it's not door to door, because with PT, every time the train doesn't run to time, you have to add that time in. So there's an average there's an average FAF time that comes with PT that we haven't got across that doesn't apply to cars.
Correct. I think that's a fair statement, and everybody's connections will be different as well. So that's a fair statement.
Also spent in a cold and miserable wind tunnel with no seats, which I think we could do better on.
Yeah, no, through you, the chair, good point. And I think amenity is one of the key things that we do look at as well to make sure that those connections are suitable and comfortable enough. So that's essentially some analysis between the relative cost and speed of car. We'll pass over to Andy, who will have some international trends, some regional trends, and some travel choice trends. So over to you, Andy.
Just before we do that, just on this cost comparison point, Councillor Staples.
Really enjoyed reading this. Thank you. Fantastic information. But, and I had a CE once that always said nothing matters before the but. I can see us coming under criticism because this is purely about time and money, and it's not. It doesn't have social cost, I guess, when things go wrong. So, is there any opportunity? And I'm not asking for this by next meeting or whatever, to have some either a paper or some comment around the fact that it's difficult to catch PT because I've got the baby and I've got to get the washing. I'm having lots of arguments with my partner because the train's never on time. That there's a whole social dynamic that this doesn't touch, and I'm wondering if or when we could have some comment around social dynamic. And I know you're all very busy, and so I'm not asking for it.
Through you, the chair, we can do that. This is obviously an update that's often requested by council, so we're just bringing insights as requested. We can certainly add some social dynamics. And I think we've had a few mode shift drivers, both positive and negative, workshops with council in the past, and that takes a much broader perspective. The two that we just looked at today were purely affordability and relative travel time, so we can definitely provide those wider dimensions at a workshop in the future if that helps.
It's an interesting point, isn't it? Because I think there's this tension in deciding around, or decision making around transport and infrastructure investments at a national or local level, where wider social benefits, impacts, it's contentious, isn't it? Whether and how much to incorporate those into our analysis and our cost benefit analysis. But I think it's a good point, and we should, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm in favour of doing it, but it's often gets swept away because we should only be looking at cost and time, etc. But yeah, good points. The FAF factor. Andy, back to you. Thanks.
Thanks very much. So I'm just going to go through some trends. So starting off with some New Zealand trends and then looking a little bit broader to Australasia. So here we've got a bit of a comparison between Auckland and Wellington. You've got rugby analogies between Blues and the Hurricanes. We've got football this year, so now looking at PT. So on the left we've got annual bus patronage. This is comparing against 2019 just to see kind of how we stack up. And for bus, Wellington's been generally tracking ahead of Auckland. You look 2025, we are around 105 or so percent above 105% of 2019 patronage, and Auckland's just a little bit below. And if you look at rail on the other side, it's kind of broadly been a similar trend, but over the last couple of years, the gap between Wellington and Auckland has probably decreased. In the last year, actually, Auckland's patronage was around about 80% pre-COVID, whereas in Wellington it was around about 75%. So I think some of that's just been because of potentially some of the working from home trends, but also Auckland went through a period where there was disruption on the rail network, and they're kind of pushing through that, and we've got some challenges. So that's kind of our reading of what's behind that trend. Oops. So this is just a kind of high-level summary of kind of where we're at 6 months ago compared to now. And the main takeout is rail's probably a little bit down compared to what it was in November 2024. So now a little bit more just looking a bit broader across Australasia. So this chart here, there are lots of lines on it, but it kind of picks out for the last 2 years the trends in mass transit. So rail, patronage and bus as well across the major jurisdiction in Australasia. And the red dotted line shows 100% of pre-COVID. And so you can kind of see that Wellington and put Auckland on there as well, actually tracking pretty well compared to other jurisdictions in Australia. Auckland and Melbourne, Sydney and Melbourne are a little bit below Wellington in terms of that rebound post-COVID. The highest performing ones are South East Queensland and Perth, and that's a function of South East Queensland have basically slashed their PT fares to 50 cents. So they've had a big boost, which you expect with that kind of incentive. And in Perth, they have also invested quite a bit in infrastructure improvement. So that's kind of what's behind that. So yeah, the upshot is fares and infrastructure investment. That's what's been driving a lot of that growth.
That's a all.
I just had a question on that previous graph. You had a little arrow in the June 24. Is there anything that we're supposed to know about that?
I'm struggling to see if there's June 24.
So it's between May and June, there's the little black arrow.
That's,
anything supposed to...
that may well not have meant to be there. So
I was like, I missed something important.
Good spotting. Didn't make the cut.
Someone forgot to move the cursor. Okay.
Yeah. So this slide here, this is just something we've kind of picked out around, I suppose it's a transport, land use, urban form. So in various Australasian metropolitan areas, they've kind of tracked the population weighted density through time. So an upward sloping line means that I suppose urban density is increasing, and you can see that certainly Sydney's in the yellow, Melbourne is the next one down, and they've all been kind of trending upwards, probably a higher rate of increase for Sydney and Melbourne compared to the other metros, but they're also starting at a different sort of higher starting point with a drop during COVID when there was less development. So I suppose that's kind of something that we'll be looking to see if we can do something similar for Wellington, because kind of what we have seen when we've done kind of limited research here, but also overseas, is that correlation between urban form, high density, and increasing PT usage and increasing mode share. So that's something we'll be looking to expand on.
Question there, Chair.
Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Duffy.
Is just on that. So, are you looking to do that just for Wellington City or for the whole Wellington region collectively, or could we get that broken down by each metropolitan centre in the Wellington region so we can see the relative change in density across the 4 metros?
Through you, Chair, we'll look to do it for each of the TAs, but we'll probably just have to get back to you as to the sort of details of that. But it should be possible. We'll have the information at a more granular level than just the Wellington region. Just going through some more regional trends. So we've been tracking state highway traffic volumes. We're generally back at pre-COVID levels across most of the locations. Kapiti is a bit of an outlier. It's a bit higher, about 20% higher than pre-COVID, which we think is a function of some of the post-TG works around Mackay's Crossing. So it's a function actually where you're counting traffic, but equally there has been growth up the corridor. You've got growth because of not only because of TG, but also because of Peka Peka to Otaki as well. So it's probably overstating it, but there has been growth in traffic volumes, and you can kind of see that when you also compare against some of the PT patronage on the Kapiti line. It's down a little compared to Hutt Valley line, which to some extent I think is probably due to a little bit of modal shift back to private motor vehicles. And the other one that's
if you build it, they will come.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the other one, some of the Wellington City sites, Common Drive, Vivian Street, are a little bit lower than pre-COVID, and some of that's because there's been kind of works on the network, but it is also because it's constrained corridors, so there's actually very little capacity for growth. So that's kind of another reason why we're seeing what we're seeing there. Just looking at state highway travel times, so picked out up to Wellington between 2019 and 2024. Give or take, peak period travel times are broadly similar, comparing 19 and 24. The main difference, kind of what we're seeing, it's a little bit subtle, is there's a little bit of peak contraction because a little bit more working from home. So some of the congestion that might have started to build at, say, 6:45 in the morning is now building a little bit later and sort of rippling down the corridor. So the same sticky points are still there. It's just the duration of that stickiness and congestion has kind of changed a little bit. Probably something that's quite noticeable is, to a lesser extent, Mondays, but certainly Fridays are less congested on not only the State Highway 2 corridor, but State Highway 1 as well, compared to midweek. Friday mornings, it's certainly a lot faster and less congested, and I'm not sure whether that's making people switch from taking the train to driving, but that's just a function of different changing travel patterns. And I'll talk a little bit more around how PT is still significantly down on a Friday morning compared to other days of the week. Yeah.
Mr. Chair. Yes,
So a number of other transport jurisdictions have adapted to this new post-COVID environment by starting to put off-peak fares into the week day periods. So on a diagram, on maps like that, the off-peak suddenly becomes Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Are we getting to the point where we might want to incentivize behaviour by looking at how we adjust the peak, and recognising at the same time that our weekend services have gone through the roof? How much agility do we have within our system and within our relationship with NZTA to be able to reflect changes like this in our fare structure?
It's not just the fare structure; it's the timetable as well. So places are making, when they say extending off-peak fares to Friday, in some places it's not just the fares; it's the entire timetable. They're putting a Saturday timetable essentially on Friday.
Through the chair, good question. I know the City of London's looked at moving off-peak fares onto Fridays as well. So it's definitely something that can be considered. I guess the two questions that you have to ask is, what's the cost of off-peak fares on a Friday? Because obviously that discount will reduce income unless a patronage effect has a very, very strong patronage effect to essentially counter that discount. And the second thing is, the reason that people aren't travelling on a Friday, is it necessarily affordability, or is it just a lifestyle choice, perhaps working from home? So if we bottom out those two things, that will give us an idea about whether we'll have an effective strategy of trying to encourage people by having more affordable fares on a Friday. But I think it will be a line call. It'll be very close whether that loss in additional income through offering the discount will offset or encourage people to not work from home, I think, is the question.
It's really whether your Saturday timetable is cheaper to deliver than your existing weekday timetable, and so therefore by having an extra weekend day where it's cheaper to deliver your timetable because you've got fewer services, etc., that you're actually saving money. But anyway, Councillor Saul.
Just picking up on Councillor Ponta's point, or maybe this might be something for later, I guess. With that provocation, we've got the interplay not only of the timetable, but perhaps our rostering for, as we go into bus contracts. So I wonder how all those three interplay. If we're starting to look at the service design and offering different fare structures, what kind of impact that will have on our rostering for changing weekdays and weekends, that whole thing. Don't know whose in-tray that falls into.
Kevin's.
We'll talk about this afternoon then.
No, look, this is a really good question. I think that the question is probably not so much about the off-peak discount, but it's, do we tailor our network for days of the week? Noting there's pros and cons. Obviously, the benefit is we could potentially have a more efficient network if we tailor it based on patronage demand for the day. The con is obviously legibility, because when a customer turns up on a daily basis, they want to know a bus leaves at 8 o'clock because it leaves at 8 o'clock every day of the week. So there's pros and cons in both directions, but it's definitely something that we can think about in the
Yeah, and I
future
guess
years.
also
So,
that's how we structure our bus contracts as well, to have that agility if this is something we want to do for the coming period as well.
Councillor Staples?
Thank you. I just have a question around when we're thinking about our timetables, etc. Do we give thought to the fact that not everybody works in technology or online and can work from home? So somebody who works in a shop or as a nurse or what, they can't work from home on a Friday. So where are we giving consideration to the fact that a lot of people can't work from home on a Friday, and it seems counterproductive to me to cut the timetable back when actually we're wanting people to use that service, and we'd be better off, I know not fiscally, but offering a discount on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday and getting people out of their cars.
Lots to think about. I knew this would be a entertaining presentation. Carry on, Andy.
Cool. So now we're crossing over to the corridor up through Polydor and Carpety. So this just looks at travel times, changes between 2019 and 2024 coming in from Waikanae to Wellington. So big difference there is Transmission Gully, and in the morning peak that has resulted in about 10 or so minute improvement in travel time for your typical commuter from Waikanae to Wellington CBD. And kind of interesting looking at the maps, and you might not be able to fully pick it out there. People will sail through Transmission Gully, but then there's actually a little bit more congestion on the section from Tawa down through to Granada, because you kind of, people are coming through to that, I suppose, still a bit of a bottleneck at a faster rate than they were before. So you're probably getting 15 minutes of time saving down to the TG State Highway 59 merge, but then there's a little bit more congestion and stickiness coming into Wellington.
Question from Councillor Gaylor on this?
Sorry, mine was actually going to be more of an observation to break that down, because as a person who does do that route, there is two very different patterns from the morning to the afternoon. So the afternoon pattern is the one that is the hugest point of difference now, because there's just never a bottleneck, whereas before the Pukerua Bay could add either 30 minutes to 1 hour to my travel time every single time without fail. And that wasn't even an accident. An accident's even worse. I have to say that the morning one is sort of actually quite building up again, and the bottleneck does actually happen pretty much what it used to happen. So, and I noticed that with, you're doing your mileage and stuff, it's, you're quite aware of that. So they're two very different patterns.
It's a very interesting Waterview Tunnel, right? Have you looked at that, Andy? Because with Waterview Tunnel, when they opened it, it was, I think you were getting like sometimes up to 20 minutes of savings in the peak. But I think that's basically disappeared now, where there's the time savings are gone because it's filled up. And I mean, the same will happen with Transmission Gully, right? Yeah, interesting.
But the PM peak, I kind of put up there a 30 to 40 minute improvement from Otaki to Wellington through all those northern corridors. But it is starker in the PM, because once you get out of Wellington, it's basically free flowing all the way up to Otaki, whereas you've still got some bottlenecks in the morning. So, yeah.
On our slide, it doesn't actually say PM peak, does it?
No, I've not got PM on there. That was more just an observation from some other work that we've.
Yeah. Okay.
So just kind of jumping back to bus and rail boardings, this is just looking at differences in, again, compared 2024-25 compared to pre-COVID, looking at day of week on the left-hand side. So kind of looking at bus, we're pretty much back at pre-COVID for Monday, Wednesdays, a little bit of a drop on Friday, which is primarily due to fewer commuters, but then significantly higher, 130, 140% on Saturday, Sunday. And rail kind of shows a similar pattern during the week, but it's probably a bit more stark for Fridays. Now you've got like a 20% drop compared to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
How much has our bus frequency on Saturday and Sunday increased? Because we basically increased services frequency in the off peak on Saturday Sunday as part of the reduction of split shifts. Is that right?
Through not that much. I think most of the additional services were the weekday into peak. There were some additional timetable services at the time through the weekend. I think a lot of that's been driven by the reliability and obviously the introduction of some high frequency core routes as well, which would have been back in 2018.
Councillor
I don't know how much of a bearing this might have, but was curious to know with some of the Hutt Valley routes or the eastbourne routes on the weekend, given the fall of rail patronage, whether passengers are opting for taking the bus over rail just out of certainty rather than having complete awareness of BRT. Is that too granular to break down?
No, we can certainly look at that. I think it's through you, the chair. It's a good question. If you see the rail usage or pre-COVID for Saturday and Sunday, clearly people are choosing other modes, and it looks like that there may be a bit of cannibalisation between our rail network and our bus network. So
83. I mean, the 83 is super busy, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. We can look at that.
Councillor Connolly.
Yeah, just commenting on that weekend weekend train patronage. Like, obviously, it's massively down, and it's not rocket science to equate that to the fact that invariably the train doesn't run. So people just assume it's not running and don't rely on it. It would be interesting to know, like, if that wasn't a factor, what that figure would be. Like, and I know that's pie in the sky, but it's difficult separating out the different factors, i.e. the reliability, the fact that we've got those weekends being replaced by buses. Like, all these things are compounding to mean the rail service is really struggling. But I mean, we know that, and fixing it is the challenging bit.
Through you, the chair, just one thing to note for the weekend rail services, it won't take into account BRT patronage. So essentially, it's probably being a bit unduly harsh on the rail because obviously we're not capturing those BRT figures in that metric, but we can capture it elsewhere.
Carry on, Eddie.
Cool. So this chart on the right hand side, I think I've kind of talked through that. That's just looking at for a weekday, that sort of post-COVID rebound. So in the peak periods, buses are at 5-10% lower, but the off-peak stands out at 14% higher than pre-COVID, and in the PM we're pretty much back at pre-COVID levels. So you still have a little bit of that sort of working from home in the morning peak, but I think some of that's because it's probably a slightly different mix of commuters, and probably a smaller percentage of them can actually work from home compared to rail, where the majority have the ability to work from home, and a lot of them do. So this is just, I think it's a request from one of the previous council meetings around the work that went on over Easter on State Highway 2 when they were digging up and fixing the sewer main. So State Highway 2 was down to one lane one lane was out, so it was down from 4 to 3 just north of Melling. And so my team, working with NZTA and Hutt City, did quite a bit of work to help firstly understand what was, I suppose, the optimum way of doing the traffic management, and we've also done a little bit of monitoring just to understand what happened versus also kind of what we thought might happen. So basically, one lane was closed southbound, and on the left-hand side, the chart there shows on the 7th of April, which was the week before the works on a Monday, the typical weekday, 8 a.m. And you can kind of pick out there's generally slow-moving traffic where people that use that corridor would expect to see it around KGB, Melling, and then south of Petone, with around 35-40 minute travel times from Upper Hutt to Narrawonga as an average. Then the middle plot there shows on the first weekday of the closure, so that was Monday the 14th of April, and it wasn't great if you're commuting in from Upper Hutt to Wellington, which is probably an understatement. So 5+ kilometre queues approaching Kenilworth Bridge, heading southbound, 25 to 30 minute delays, approaching, which equated to 25 to 30 minutes of delays. So that wasn't great. There was some significant congestion, but kind of what you saw once you got through that was that it was actually a little bit faster once you've gone through that merge, because on a typical weekday, traffic would be kind of sort of flowing through to Melling and would get sort of held up at Melling and Petone because you were kind of metering traffic at KGB. Downstream, it was faster, but that was probably no consolation on that first closure day, because it was still 15-20 minutes longer than a typical day. But when we looked at the Wednesday on that first week, and admittedly, people were probably starting to head off for Easter, so there was an element of, I suppose, that sort of behaviour change, but people would have been travelling.
This was also school holidays as well.
Yeah, that's it. Yep. Yeah. And that was kind of one of the reasons why it was planned for that period. But yeah, what we found on that third week, there was still some queuing, some delays, but downstream, just improved traffic conditions because less congestion. So at the end, when travel time between Upper Hutt and Wellington was broadly similar to what you might call a typical weekday, but it would still obviously impact people coming from Upper Hutt to Lower Hutt.
Really interesting. Councillor Conlon?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the point of this was to think ahead to Riverlink and how if we were down to one lane, not that I know that decision hasn't been made, but if we were running on one lane for a significant period of time, what might the traffic look like? And the message is, unfortunately, that the delays are no longer just isolated at Melling, that they push it back to delays at KGB, which when we review those mitigations and the bus route changes that we've proposed, like, I think we need to be thinking about that. Not that any solutions immediately jump out, but yeah, the problem, Melling is no longer just the slow spot. It changes and pushes it up to KGB, which becomes the slow spot. So we're not doing ourselves any favours by rerouting buses through KGB.
And probably other means of updates. So myself and others in Sam's team and Hutt City and NZT are working on a sort of disruption management response plan for the Riverlink work, and that's going to include consideration of the kind of sort of behaviour change and optimisation of bus stops, bus networks to try and, I suppose, mitigate that so that you can encourage people to take alternative modes and manage that disruption.
Can you give us, I don't know what data you have, but can you give the alternative route that takes traffic along through Eastern Hutt Road and around both those intersections, and then would feed it back in Petone or later lower down? Sorry.
Yep, through you, Chair. Yeah, we can provide that. And as part of this analysis, we did look at some of the times on some of those alternative routes, and there were some unders and overs. So there's no material increase on, say, Harcourt Wherry or Eastern Hutt Road as a result of this work. So that's going to be monitoring like this will be part of the disruption response plan.
It is good. Hey, just thinking, there's a few more slides here. Then I think maybe we'll take a quick break, and then we'll do the rest of the 4 items, and then we've probably got to finish around 11:30, if possible, because there's another workshop, and then there's lunch, and then there's another committee meeting in the afternoon. So, carry on, Andy.
So the final few slides are just around some of those changes in transport trends. This one shows working from home. So on the left, you've got the 2018 census showing for each of the territorial authorities the percentage of people that categorise themselves as working from home. On the right, you've got 2023, not 2024, and that shows overall the percentage increased from 9 to 19%, and South Wairarapa, Carterton, and particularly Kapiti have now got 20% plus people who work from home, which I think that explains probably quite a lot around some of the drops in rail patronage from Wairarapa, but also from Kapiti as well. So, but we've seen that increasing working from home trend across all of the territorial authorities.
Councillor Staples?
Thanks. Is there do we have any way of knowing what these people's vocation is, or is that something that isn't shared in census? Because I sort of wonder, for instance, looking at Wairarapa and Kapiti, how many of those people are ex-government employees who have lost their jobs and are now consultants? And I don't mean that in any judgmental or derogatory term, but they are having to work from home and work differently because they are. So it's not a choice that they want to work from home. It's a fact that they don't have a job where they used to commute.
Through you, Chair, we kind of have limited information around the job categories, so we can see if we can provide a little bit more granularity, but it probably wouldn't get to that level of detail just because this data is from 2023. And this chart here, this is just looking at journey to work mode share, how that's changed for different destinations between 2013 and 2023. And the kind of punchline from this is that the non-car mode share of trips to Wellington CBD in particular, and to a lesser extent Wellington City, is pretty good. It's to the CBD, it's around about 65%, so only 35% of people commute to the CBD using a private motor vehicle, and that percentage using a private motor vehicle has actually decreased over the last 10 years. When you look outside of Wellington City, you can see that the private car mode share of those journeys to work is 85-90%, and it's actually marginally increased in certain areas over the last 10 years. So it's kind of very much a sort of, I suppose, a quite stark difference between trends to Wellington City and CBD and commuter trends to destinations outside of Wellington City.
You could map density and access to public transport across that, and it would show it pretty
Yeah,
clear.
and I think some of it's a function of people that commute to jobs in, say, Lower Hutt, Upper Hutt. It's actually where those jobs are located, because they're not necessarily going to be located on public transport.
I was going to say, I don't think those people who are walking in Upper Hutt are walking into the Wellington CBD.
Yeah.
And actually, this looks on this graph like there's quite a decrease in the number of people walking in Upper Hutt. And that must actually reflect where those jobs are rather than travel choices.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that, and there's a little bit of the census questions have changed. So it's, but the kind of high level trend is that there's not been a material change in the non-car mode share outside of Wellington City.
Councillor Sewell? Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to ask that awful question of what impact and what does this mean for us tracking for our mode shift targets and our and those ambitions? Obviously, bearing in mind there's a whole interplay of central government direction as well as what we can do within our fiscal envelope. Is that something we need to probably drill down into in terms of those mode shift targets? We're still really ambitious and wanting to achieve, but given the context we're in, and given the trends, perhaps it might be a little bit of an uphill situation. Noting that in the paper as well, there were some really clear next steps, which I guess we have to get our skates on to start to do those two things. Is it that we have to relook at our mode shift targets, or is it similar to other conversations where we've had where we can create some infographics or information where we can say, hey, we'd be able to meet these subject to particular policy directions or some of our plans that we had in our that was subject to NLTF funding, throwing that out there.
Through you, the Chair, very good question. In fact, in our private share letter to NZTA, we said we have patronage targets, which we're happy to agree to, and we have private share targets, which are pretty much a derivative of patronage because it results in fares, which are essentially conditional upon this level of investment. Currently, NZTA is not funding any of our significant investment programs, so it's very hard for us to drive mode shift and patronage with no investment in new services, infrastructure, weather tightness and sheltering and things like that. So clearly we need to make these targets conditional if they're to be realistic.
And I guess also just noting that in paragraph 35 on page 37 of the papers, there's some really key actions that have been noted. And I suppose that's probably all we can have some influence with. So just wanted to draw attention to that, and maybe with 35B, where there's that increased understanding of cost of public transport and true cost of private travel, also noting some of the points that Councillor Staples have made. Maybe there's an opportunity there for us to look at how we socialise those messages and who we need to share that message with. Yeah, I think that's probably come up with RTC as well with the presentation we had last week.
Thank you, Councillor Connolly, and then we'll
Just
conclude.
a quick question on the Wellington CBD. So that's where people live, right? What are those people? Where's the rail line that they're catching? What is this Wellington CBD train line? Is that's would be Wellington City without CBD, surely?
So just to clarify through you, Chair, so this is where people work. So this is Wellington CBD as a destination. So that's why you've got a lot of rail passengers, because they're travelling in from outside of the region.
This is where people
live.
So,
yeah.
So the Upper Hutt one is not residents of Upper Hutt. That's people who are working in Upper Hutt. Oh, okay.
Could be.
Well, could be if they live and work in Upper Hutt. So any people from Upper Hutt that commute into the CBD are doing so by rail. Oh, okay. Sorry, I completely got this wrong.
No, that's a good point. Probably should clarify its destination. So I think this is the final slide. This is just looking at the walking and cycling mode share of journeys to work, and this is by their origin, so where people live. So this is showing again quite a stark difference between Wellington City and the rest of the region. So Wellington City, you've got around about 20% of people who live in Wellington, employed persons living in Wellington, 20% walk or cycle to work, of which about 4% of those cycle. Then you look outside of Wellington City, so looking at Lower Hutt, around about 6% of employed people who live in Lower Hutt walk or cycle to work, and in Porroroo it's around 3 or 4%. So there's quite a difference in terms of propensity to use walking and cycling to travel to work, depending on where in the region you live.
So I just want to come back to my point on that, where I was talking about how we socialise the point of paragraph 35B. Maybe an action is there for us to all put our thinking caps on where that message needs to continually be pushed out and socialised, if that's possible to add that as an action on a future workshop.
Councillor Duthie?
Just clarification, is this the census 2023, so a snapshot in time?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Take a quick break, and then, so let's come back maybe at 5 past, so just a quick break, and then we can do the last 4 items on the agenda, and then we'll go into the workshop. Thanks. there's anyone next door, please come back in. Okay, so Public Transport Advisory Group meeting, item 8 is next. So we've got a team here to talk to us, and we've got Andrew online as well. So Leanne, David, in your hands.
Oh, Andrew, kia ora. Would you like to give a bit of a summary for us as the chair?
Andrew might be in the loo or having a cup of tea. slightly unfortunate. It's one of the dangers of being online, isn't it? So we'll yeah, we'll just Andrew, are you there, Andrew? He's not. So Leanne, no, that was something else flashing on the screen. Do you guys want to give us an update, and we'll see if Mr. Linson is online at some point. Or we could just actually jump to the next item, buy ourselves some time. That could work. Is that right? Because it's a slightly different team, isn't it? But
Yeah, sure.
Yep. Okay, we'll do item 9, and then we'll circle back to item 8. I'm not going to invoke standing orders for the changing of the agenda items because I don't think we need to. Okay. I did actually. By not invoking them, I actually did. So there we go. Careful what you say. Right, item 9. Take us through. This was a good report. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, councillors. This is just a brief introduction to this paper, and then we'll take it as read. This report's part of the BRT Improvement Action Plan work, where as we implement improvements, we then go out and measure changes to the customer and passenger experiences. This planned block of line was unique in that some of the blocks occurred during working days rather than solely on weekends and on those public holidays. And additionally, there were the works that we heard about earlier from Andy near Melling on State Highway 2, which also affected some of our BRT services. So key changes to our approach with this major blocker line were increased capacity and also increased comms activity and also staffing in-person support, especially at Platform 10 and also at Petone and Upper Hutt, where transfers were required between bus and train. Behind the scenes, we also prototyped a BRT bus tracking system with operators. In the fortnight following the blocker line, we conducted 125 on-platform customer interviews with those customers who were affected. And overall, acknowledging the unavoidable inconvenience that blocks of line present for the customers, we're starting to see improvements and starting to see some more customer satisfaction with the provision of buses replacing trains. All insights from the customer conversations are being folded back into the ongoing BRT action plan work. There have been no updates to the information in this report since it was drafted. And Paul, David and I are happy to take any questions in relation to the matters covered in the report.
Thank you very much. Excellent report, and good to see work happening on this. So I just wonder if there are any questions from the team or comments. Councillor Staples?
Thank you for this. When Kiwi Rail are looking at their block of line works, obviously they do some consultation, but are they really taking into consideration events like the hurricanes? Because I appreciate that they need to do the work and we want them to do the work because we want the trains to run well, but also I'm just wondering whether our major events, what part they play in Kiwi Rail actually deciding when they're going to close down and not.
They through the chair, they are taken into consideration. So both Transdev, my team, and Kiwi Rail meet to discuss blocks of line. I mean, the reality is the work has to be done, so we have to make some choices Unfortunately, with the Hurricanes game, the attendance has been relatively low, so we decided to go ahead. It wasn't until the week before where we found that the patronage, the customers were going to be over 20,000, but we'd already made the commitment to go to do the block of line.
Didn't get the result we needed either. Yeah. Oh, that was this weekend. That was, yeah, we did get the result we needed then, didn't we? Yeah.
Oh, yes, we did.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Saul?
Cool. My question is just about paragraph 21, and I might have not been listening properly just before, so you'll have to update me on that. I was just wondering what the BRT tracking prototype was. If you could just tell us a little bit about that, and what are the future plans to develop and test a prototype?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, tracking for BRT is quite difficult. In solving tracking for planned BRT, we're working around the limitations of our timetabling system, which simply wasn't designed for the episodic and also changing nature of BRT trips. They're not as scheduled and not as long-standing. So the design team is working to combine all of the necessary data inputs that we need in a way that doesn't add more work for operators or also introduce greater scope for human error. And work's continuing on that, and the next prototype is due for testing by the end of the month.
So we think if that works, we should be able to have something maybe in time for summer?
That's certainly the intention. I must reiterate, though, that this is actually something. This is something that hasn't been solved before, and we're not aware of how other operators have managed to solve it either. So we're looking for ways of combining all the necessary inputs, but in a way where we don't don't risk failure through it being too complex, or else, yeah.
Just adding to that through the chair, so there's two phases to this as well. The first step is to get to give that visibility of tracking to operators, so they can see where services are and they can manually communicate that to customers. And then the step after that is whether we can integrate it with our app and website.
Definitely worth investing in, because we know that there's going to be years of bus replacements on weekends and public holidays. So, Councillor Saul?
Just wanted to check with the upcoming schedule for block of line work and so forth, given the hurricanes thing. I note that that Hot Wheels event at the stadium is right in school holidays, and so have we got a plan around that, or are the necessary parties aware of that so we don't have another Hurricanes game situation?
I have to come back to you on that.
Thank you. Other questions, comments on this? I was going to say, very good to be talking to people at stations and gathering data. I think that's really good. And I mean, I know we did a bit of that with the Maymorn stuff, and I think this is I'm not saying we've never done it before, but I think it's a very good direct way of getting good data, and it's quite striking the little anecdotal stuff that you've got in there, including people in the Wairarapa getting a hotel in Wellington because they actually needed to get to work. I mean, it does really kind of hit home, doesn't it? So, yeah, that's it from my point of view. Other questions? No? Good. Thank you very much. And then we'll come back to item 8, Public Transport Advisory Group. Mr. Lenson, sorry, we came back from the break and started. Would you like to give us a little update on the last meeting of the advisory group?
Yeah, sure thing. Can you hear me all good?
Yes, you're coming through loud and clear.
Cool, thank you. So we had another productive meeting. It was quite good to be able to go back to PTAG and sort of, right, excuse me, and to explain to them how their input on the RPTP had been sort of used in that process. And then the bulk of it was around a workshop on the Harbour Quays, which I'm not allowed to tell you very much about because I think we actually did it before you guys. So +1 for PTAG there. But I can say that it was a very productive conversation, and I'm sure those discussions will be quite helpful for the committee as you sort of work through that process of looking at the Harbour Quays options. But happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Councillor Saul?
Just had a comment to thank PTAG and our staff in terms of the input and collaboration around the RPTP stuff. I think it shows that it's really working well, given how quickly all of you passed your resolutions after that. So just wanted to thank PTAG and everyone who worked on that.
Yes, thank you. Other comments? Very good. Okay, so thanks, Mr. Linson, thanks, team. We'll go to performance. No, we won't. We'll go to, we won't, because we've done that one. So, item 10. Yes, Metropolitan Rail Network performance and funding update. Dave.
Kia ora koutou, through you, Chair. I'll take the report as read. We do have one small update, though, since the report was written, is that we have received a letter from the Minister outlining that there is a budget announcement, and for metros, there's the funding was available for the metros to be used by KiwiRail for overdue renewals. However, the allocation is still to be determined. And council should be paying their fair share towards the upgrades, and that was very loosely around that, but we should be paying our fair share as they've intimated before. So that's the update. Any questions?
Councillor Staples.
Did they give any indication of what our fair share is, given that we pay a fair hunk of money to KiwiRail for track access, etc. now?
Yes and no. The indication from the conversations that we've had with the MOT would be our WNA proportion. So pretty much what we've already articulated through to KiwiRail for our WNA share. We probably just need to fine tune what that looks like in terms of getting it across the line. You'll be aware through the report that we had some challenges around insurance and some OPEX costs for overdue renewal. So we've still got that work to do with KiwiRail. Before we can go back and say we've agreed this amount for the next 2 years. But I'm not expecting it, unless there's a big change, to be a lot different than what we've put into the LTP numbers.
Councillor Connolly?
For the benefit of people that aren't councillors, you may not know that Paul has been providing us with almost daily sit reps on the status of the Wairarapa line and train service, and that has been invaluable. And normally there's 1 or 2 updates that he sends us per day, but after the long weekend, there was a litany of errors that happened on the to the train network. And by my reading of them, most of them would fall into the KiwiRail basket. So when it comes to paying our fair share, and under this new rail operating model, what is fair, but also when they cause 8 delays to every service that we offer, what kind of compensation would we be getting from them in terms of how this new model is going to moving forward? Well, I don't think that's fair. I think our fair share should be based on the fact that we get a service that actually works. And if it's not working, they need to provide some fair share back to us.
So, through you, Chair, just to try and address some of that. There isn't a new operating model as it stands. The investment that the government have announced is under the existing model, which is MROM, and the amount was for overdue renewals to do the catch up. So at the moment we're operating.
There is this veiled threat that this money is contingent on us paying our fair share, which implies changes to MROM, right?
Yes. Well, we believe actually what the view that we've had and through the papers, that the view is that we are paying our fair share, and so we believe that the amount that we're paying and the overdue renewals is the government commitment that they put under this current model. So we believe that a new model would be even different than this one. So we believe that we're still operating under the current model with funding the overdue renewals, because that's part of the MRON for the investment that they were supposed to put in at the start, so that MRON could run alongside the WNA quite willingly in a steady state world. So under the WNA, Kiwi Rail do get penalised. Oh, the Wellington Network Agreement, the 88-year agreement, which is the access user pays Yep. Under that mechanism, there is a performance fee that's allocated to Kiwi Rail, and it is on a sliding scale of performance. And so, if they don't meet that through a multiple of performance indicators and KPIs, they may not achieve what they believe is their performance fee. So that's how that gets analysed and appropriated accordingly. So at the moment they're not achieving that, so they're not getting their performance fee, and it's on a month by month basis.
I would be interested to see a little bit more of that data. Because as I say, it's been really useful what Paul's been sending, but I've been kind of in my mind trying to raise it up a level to kind of work out what the kind of performance errors are and what that relates to in terms of the number of our services affected, etc. But you might have all that collated already as part of the performance analysis that you do as part of this contract.
Yeah, we do collect that, and the targets that have been set and agreed will be also on our website under the performance. So you'll see where the targets are and the tracking. And at the moment, we just show the targets for completed trips or peak time and stuff like that. So it's kind of a high level view that's on our website. But so we can come back and give you the breakdown of KPIs, but probably in more of a workshops environment, which would be helpful.
Councillor Staples?
Would we be right in being concerned that there could be wriggle room in there so that when we get our updates from Paul and we see that there's this whole list of Kiwi Rail issues, that a lot of them they can say, oh, but this was scheduled work or blah blah blah, or and therefore it doesn't affect their performance payment. I just think of how we sit with some of our other contracts and we get told, well, no, they don't get penalised for that because it says this in the contract. And I'm just wondering how much of that is actually the same in the Kiwi Rail contract, and that they're not going to get penalised for a lot of this stuff because in the contract it says we can't.
Yeah, that's a good question. There is wiggle room currently in the contracts. The wiggle room is the WAMP work, the project upgrade work, which is Wellington Metro Upgrade Program. That is not currently as part of the performance fee in the WNA because it's not part of the WNA. So when Kiwi Rail have TSRs based on normal maintenance work, which as the Wellington Metro Upgrade Program is coming to a close in the area, there's more of, then they are definitely under the WNA KPI regime. So yes, in the past there has been some level of the TSRs that aren't affected by the KPIs, but going forward we'll see more of it being transferred over to the WNA and then the contract.
Councillor Duffy?
Yes, that's working. My question relates to, so paragraph 18 onwards talks about how we've developed a draft joint Wellington investment case for rail with a 10-year horizon. What's the total sort of cost of the 10-year investment required in that? And how does the 100 and something million that's been allocated in this year's budget for this year and next year, what proportion of that work is going to be done with that funding, i.e. getting a sense of how much more funding and more work there is to do following the current commitment from the government?
Yep, thank you. Another good question. The investment case, just for clarity, was to give a 10-year view on the overdue renewals, not the steady state business as usual stuff on the network. Kiwi Rail's forecast for a 10-year view was circa 700 to 750 million. So the 100 million that we're expecting out of the new bid plus the 53 that they've already given is 153 million out of that 700 to 750 million. So there's more to do. I will caveat that though is that a lot of that was desktop exercise. So as we get closer to the pointy end of those renewals, we might be able to reduce that. They might go up. So hopefully reduce, of course, but we might not see it as forecast. But the 150 million that they've committing to, I'm saying 150 million because I'm assuming that we get around about 100 because that's what we asked for. Is going a long way to a good start.
And a further question, the 10-year program to catch up on the overdue stuff, does it actually catch up on all the overdue stuff in that 10 years, or is that just the beginning of a multi-decadal overdue catch-up?
It depends how much investment we get, but the optimal in the investment case, the optimal sort of time frame to deliver the catch-up renewals was around about 12 years, depending on the disruption that we would want to see in Wellington of services. We believe that the overdue funding is required as long as we've got a good handle on the steady state renewals as hand in hand. So we still need to invest within the WNA. Kiwirau still needs to deliver that as well as the overdue. So if funding is available at the right levels, then I believe we could probably achieve most of the overdues within the next 10 to 15 years, but I'm putting a number on, say, 12 as the optimal.
Very good. So are there any other comments, questions on this report? Doing well, team. Thank you very much. Keep us posted. And the
Chair, I'll just comment that once that overdues, after that sort of 12, 15 years, I will be eligible for my Super Gold card to enjoy them. So that's an important comment to make.
Councillor Duthie.
That's a sobering thought, but you're looking good, Councillor Duthie. Okay, final item for today on the agenda for this meeting is the Public Transport Performance Report for April. Hey, Paul, thanks again for a good report. Take us through.
Oh, good. Morning, all. So I'll take the report as read, but we'll just go through some high-level stats for April. Bus passenger boardings for April were 2.08 million versus 2.18 million in April, and year-to-date is 100.9%, so relatively flat. Reliability was 99.5% versus 99.7% in April of last year. This continues to reflect really a stable bus network. Punctuality was under the KPI of 95% at 94.8%. Congestion at the usual places, including the sewer works at Melling over the Easter Ansett Block line. Rail patronage numbers down against the same month last year by 110,000 boardings. Rail performance continues to be impacted by TSRs on Kapiti and Wairarapa and the Hutt Valley. Also signal faults and work sites. Reliability was up on March by 0.3% to 97.4 against March, but way down and not anywhere near meeting the KPI at 82.6% punctuality. In April, there were 31.7% of rail services were bus replaced. 30.4% of those were planned. Ferry reliability, 93.8% was reliable. There were 46 cancellations, of which 34 were weather related and 12 were mechanical. 98% of services ran to time. From a health and safety perspective, there were 3 minor injuries based on a 12-month rolling average. Passenger injuries are trending down. There were 4 cash box theft attempts during April. No drivers were injured during the thefts. Police were called to 7 disorderly or abusive incidents on bus services. On all occasions, police attend and remove the aggressor. Fare revenue down against budget in April by 1.97 million, and year-to-date budget shortfall was 15 mil. Just as an update, Councillor Saw, there is no block of line for the whole Wheels event. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Paul. Are there any questions? With the cash box, attempted cash box thefts, were they successful, unsuccessful? They were unsuccessful.
No, I think since April there have been 10 attempts. 2 have got away with the money. The other 8 have not.
Yeah, it's not really about the cash, but more about the drivers, really. But yeah, exactly. Councillor Duffy has got a question.
Thank you. 3 questions. The first one relates to paragraph 23, where very usefully, and thank you very much, you've provided some data breaking down punctuality at origin between early and late, which is useful to see. It's actually quite an interesting proportion is leaving early. And I guess an element of relevance there is, was it just sort of 1 minute and 1 second early, or was it 5 or 10 minutes early, which makes a big difference to passengers waiting. And so looking forward to that, the punctuality at timing points, at scheduled timing points along the route. So really that's just a comment of thank you and looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah,
Second one, sorry?
Drilling more into understanding exactly how early that actually was. So yes,
Thank you. Second question relates to ferry performance, paragraphs 53 onwards. It's actually just a simple question about the reintroduction of the ikarere into service. The last I heard it was due to come in May. We're now in June. Do we know if the ikarere is running or whether there's a significant delay still to putting it back into service?
No, apparently it is ready for sea trials, but I've found out today that there is an issue that they are working on with the charging infrastructure. So once that's done, the sea trials will commence.
Do they have a new forecast date for when it will come back online?
I'll have to come back to you, if it's okay.
Okay, thank you. I have Eastbourne Community Board tonight and they will ask. Right. They're looking forward to it, as we all are, because it's a great service to use, especially in spring, to go to Matius homes. A third question related to rail complaints. So this is within the attachment report with all the colourful graphs. Quite an uptick in rail complaints from the Hutt Valley, interestingly, and expect the big uptick from the Wairarapa. That's understandable in the current situation, but quite a change in the Hutt Valley there, both in the month comparison and in the year-to-date comparison. Do we know why that is?
I'm just going to say for the month comparison, I would think it was the block of line that has driven those complaints. I know over the first couple of days, the contact centre got a lot of calls really on which way to go and how to get there.
Right, and that might actually account for the year-to-date because the quantum of that big amount in April would probably make the difference between the year-to-dates. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. That's all my questions, Chair.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Saul?
Thank you. Thanks for the update. My question was around the transport officer activity, and just curious to know whether our transport officers are present or work around the bus replacement train universe much, and it'd be good to know a little bit about that. Seems like they've been quite successful in payment validations, but in the report it would be good to know how their presence or their role works in BRT land.
Through you, the Chair, definitely they are very present over the block of line periods, especially the big ones we have at Easter and Christmas. They're all part of making sure that customers understand what's happening. So they spend all their time on network over that period.
And then how does it work if it's unplanned, for example? Like, do we have the sort of comms or the sort of network, does the network work well there where you can sort of move people around and deploy them there, or is that?
Probably not as well, and that's probably where the CSAs or the customer service ambassadors for Transdev probably step in a little faster. Our team might already be scheduled or rostered for the day, and Transdev staff and the CSAs are the ones who probably pick it up more.
And this, my final question was about bus driver recruitment, and I note we've never really got to the full complement that we need. So wondering what we're doing with the operators in the industry to try and boost that up. But also, I guess when we don't have future projections, it's difficult to foresee and forecast what the headwinds are in that space, noting that a lot of the international drivers that we recruited may be coming to the end of their contract, and them remaining in those jobs is sort of contingent on their visa applications, probably noting that we can't dig into that much detail sitting here at this level. What are we doing around forecasting that? Do we have a sense of when those contracts end, what the renewal state is, and what our mitigation is?
The operators report monthly on the status of visas and how many are due. So, for example, 56 drivers are due in a year's time, so in 12 months' time. The Connecticut actively working with those drivers on their visas, so they're currently doing that now. They're due in 12 months. So yeah, those. So there's no one due at the moment. All of them are pretty much 50% of 50 of them are due in 12 months.
In terms of retention, are we happy with what the operators are doing?
I think so. Yeah, no one's calling anything out. It is a focus of all the monthly meetings we have on where people are at. So yeah, I think we're pretty comfortable.
I guess we're particularly sensitive given the situation we were in before, right?
I think just on the driver numbers, with establishment of 735, and I think the report says we're at 719. There's 27 casual staff for Transurban Lower Hutt that aren't in the numbers.
Councillor Duthie, got your hand up again, or is that a remnant hand? Remnant hand. Okay, good. So that's all the questions, I think. So thank you, team. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, team. And thanks everyone for work on the material. There is a report coming on the Watered Upper Line to council. I think it's just dropped into the papers. So we'll that's the Watered Upper Line that will be discussed on Thursday at our council meeting. Okay, we'll close off with a karakia, me karakia tātou. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia ki tūru tapu nui, kia wātia, kia mama, te ngākau, te tinana, te wairua e te arataka, ko ia rā e rongo, whakairia ake ki runga, kia tina, huie, taiki.